Have you ever wondered where the origin of our alphabet actually comes from? It's more than just the ABCs that we learn from a day-to-day basis and we use in our everyday life. It's actually a very interesting story that dates back to 3000 BC, where the Egyptians were developing a new form of language written instead of actually spoken called hieroglyphics. It's technically considered an ideogram, which is basically a picture that represents an idea instead of a sound. So you can see the difference between that and now. We actually use, I guess, an image that represents a sound instead of an idea now. After the Egyptians developed this form of writing, Semitic people used it as their inspiration to develop their own. They actually were the first alphabet which we originate from and we use now. They came up with a system in which they will include sounds instead of ideas for the representations of of alphabets or images. Wendell Hall once said that they were the leap from pictorial representations to symbols standing for sounds of speech. After that, the Phoenicians were the next people to adapt to the alphabet idea. They actually considered themselves, I guess, more advanced, and instead of making more pictorial representations, they actually used more letter-like representations for their alphabet. So instead of looking like little frogs and bulls and stuff like that, they actually made more letter-like A's and B's and stuff like that. They actually used only consonants, which kept their scribes more in demand instead of just everyday people learning how to write. After that, the Greeks were next in line to develop this idea of an alphabet for communicational purposes. They actually adapted and kept the majority of their Phoenician alphabet, as you will, and they actually took out certain things that they didn't need, because instead of having so many consonants, they actually did pronounce the majority of their vowels. So they took out some of the letters that they didn't need and included the vowels that we actually use today, like A, E, I, O, and U. The reason why they're not together in the alphabet that we know today is because of them. Because taking out bits and pieces of the alphabet that they started with, they just placed it back in the order that they took it out. So that's why they're spread out in our alphabet today. After the Greeks, Etruscans were the next to adopt their alphabet system. They actually dominated the system and simply kept it and just wanted to keep it and use it to their language basis. And as you can see in this picture, we started from having pictures to actually having more letter-like forms. And as you can see, like M and N and P, we actually use those today. So that's thanks to the Greeks and the Etruscans, and last but not least, the Romans, because the Romans were actually conquered by Etruscans and they enforced their alphabet upon them. So the Romans actually changed it up a bit because they didn't speak the language that the Greeks did. They actually spoke a Latin-based language, which is why the majority of our Latin countries actually kept most of their letters, because their languages are based on Latin origins. Romans just kept it and adapted it, added more letters here and there that they actually needed, just like everybody else, and we actually kept their alphabet. So thanks to the Romans, we have the alphabet that we know today, like the ABCs and stuff like that. The only thing different is that the pronunciation of each letter is different, but that's according to what language you actually speak. Most languages like Italian and everything else uses the same one. So, as you can see, starting from here, we transferred to the letters, and we just adapted from there on out. And now that you know, the order of the actual alphabet comes from the way of memorization that's best for us. And that's pretty much why we sing the ABCs the way we do in the order they're the kind of are. And it just helps with memorization. So, now you know the origin of your ABCs. Do you know your ABCs?